67 Blender tips and tricks you need to know, starting from beginner and going all the way to advanced. This video was brought to you by Blender Masterclass 2026. It's the fastest way to go from beginner to advanced, and it's the most comprehensive design course for FDM 3D printing, specifically using Blender. Find exclusive discounts and more info in the description below. Tip number 1, download the latest version of Blender by going to blender.org. Tip number 2, try out some experimental builds by scrolling down and clicking this button here, download Blender Experimental. Here you download new alpha or beta versions of Blender. Tip number 3, go ahead and delete the default cube by selecting the cube and pressing X and then clicking on delete. Tip number 4, how to create objects using Blender. There are two ways. First, you can go up here and go to add, mesh, and you could add a cube. Or you could use the keyboard shortcut Shift A and go to mesh and then add cube. Tip number 5, how to move and scale objects in Blender. Go ahead and select on the object, in this case the default cube, and go to the move tool here, or you can move it along the plane. To scale an object, go to scale, and you can scale it along an axis, along two axes, along a plane, or the entire object. Tip number 6, how to see how big or how small an object is in Blender. Go ahead and select on the object and press N on your keyboard. And here you can see the object's dimensions. Tip number 7, how to use a trick or hack to use the default Blender unit instead of having to manually change them. So go ahead and go to Scene right here, Scene Properties, and click the drop down for units. You'll see by default it's set to metric and meters. And you'll see the dimensions of this object appear to be in meters. However, it's actually in millimeters. So if we were to export this as an STL file, drag it into our slicer, the object will be exactly 2.78 millimeters, not meters. I know it's a little bit confusing. So just know that if you're using the default units, you don't really need to change it, and just know that even though it says meters, it's actually in millimeters. Tip number 8, how to actually change the units in Blender correctly. Go ahead and go to the Scene Properties, Units, and set the unit scale to 0.001. Now change the length to millimeters right here. Now you'll notice our grid is messed up. So we'll need to go up here to the viewport overlays and set the scale to 0.001. Now you'll notice our object correctly says 2.78 millimeters. Tip number 9, how to set precise dimensions of an object in Blender. Go ahead and select on the object, and once again press N on the keyboard to open up the item properties. And now we can go ahead and set the dimensions. And for this, I'm going to zoom way out because I'm gonna make the object much bigger. And let's say for a project we need a 67 millimeter spacer, and it'll be 67 millimeters wide. And let's say for the height, it only has to be 42 millimeters. So now we have precise dimensions for this object. Tip number 10, how to export the object as an STL file for 3D printing. Go ahead and select on the object here, and then go to File, Export, STL. To export only the selected object, go ahead and click the checkbox for Selection Only. Tip number 11, know the difference between Object Mode and Edit Mode. If you go to the top left here, you can switch between Object Mode and Edit Mode. Object Mode is where you select individual objects, you can move or scale them, but that's about it. If you want to actually edit the shape of an object, you'll need to go into Edit Mode. So go up here and go to Edit Mode. In Edit Mode, you can select individual vertices, go to the Move tool, and you can move them around like so. Tip number 12, to precisely set the position of a vertex in Blender, select that vertex, press N to open up the properties panel here, and make sure you're on global here. And here we can set the exact position of this coordinate. For example, we can set this one to -33, -33, and 33. Tip number 13, whenever you scale an object, make sure to apply the scale after scaling it. So here we have our object that we've scaled up, and you can see here in the properties panel, the scale is 33.5, 33.5, and 21. And here are the precise dimensions of the object. Now to apply the scale, press Ctrl A, go to Apply, and then Apply Rotation and Scale. And now you'll see the scale is 111. Tip number 14, delete the camera and the light in the default scene. So when you open Blender for the first time, you might be wondering what these objects are. This, of course, is the default cube, and this is a camera, and this is a light. They're used for rendering your object in the scene. But for modeling for 3D printing, we don't really need the camera or light. So to delete them, go ahead and select the light here, and then select the camera, and you can select both of them by holding Shift while selecting it, and then press X on the keyboard for delete, and then press delete. Tip number 15, know the difference between mesh modeling and solid body CAD modeling. Blender uses what's called mesh modeling. If we go to edit mode, you'll see this object is made up of vertices, edges, and faces. We can select individual vertices and move them like so. We could also select faces like this, and we could even delete faces. And you'll notice now our object is kind of broken. It's no longer a solid manifold object. This basically means the object has no thickness. So when designing an object in Blender, make sure not to break the mesh like this. Tip number 16, how to fix viewport clipping in Blender. So here we have an object that we have in our scene, and if we rotate around, you'll see the object is getting kind of cut off in the back like so. To fix this, press N on the keyboard, go down to View and open up the View properties. Simply change the end value to a much higher number, let's say 10,000. And now you see we don't have the clipping issue. Tip number 17, know the difference between vertex selection, edge selection, and face selection modes. You can move individual vertices using the vertex selection mode. You can move individual edges by using the edge selection mode. And you can move individual faces using the face selection mode. Tip number 18, how to use the move keyboard shortcut. The keyboard shortcut for move is G, and it's for grab. So go ahead and select on something and press G to grab it. Now we can move it around, but to constrain it along a certain axis, go ahead and press on Z, X, or Y. In this case, up and down is the Z direction. Or we can move it along the Y direction by pressing Y, or the X direction by pressing X. Tip number 19, use snapping to precisely manually move objects, faces, edges, or vertices. Go into edit mode by either pressing tab or going up here and go to edit mode. And let's go ahead and select on this face here. If we turn on snapping right here, set it to closest increment, and select absolute increment snap, we can now go ahead and move this face precisely at 1 millimeter increments. Tip number 20, use the X-ray tool here to be able to see through an object. So if we go into edit mode, we can now select on vertices that were once hidden behind the object. Tip number 21, know the extrude tool in edit mode. Over here you can see the extrude tool. Go ahead and select on this. Now if we select on a face by going to face selection mode, we can now extrude it up in the Z direction like so. And if you click on this face here, we could extrude it sideways in the Y direction like so. You can see how you could pretty easily build a lot of different shapes using this method. Tip number 22, know how to use the Inset Faces tool. This tool right here is the Inset Faces tool. Select on it and select a face. Now if you drag this circle here, we get inset that face. Now if we go to extrude, we can now extrude that face down. And here we've created a simple container. Tip number 23. Let's say we want to see the dimensions of this object while we're editing it. How can we do this? Well, go up to this drop down right here and select on the edge length measurement checkbox right here. Now, when you select on a face, you can see all of the dimensions of the edges. Tip number 24. Now this one is a fun one to break up the monotony of all different tools. You can customize the user interface of Blender by changing the Blender theme. First, we'll need to go to edit mode, go to preferences, system, and check allow online access. Now go to extensions.blender.org/themes. And here you can select between a bunch of different really cool themes. Let's go ahead and select on Genuinely Disgusting. Go ahead and click on Get Theme. And now the really cool thing about allowing the online access is all you have to do is drag this right here into Blender, and it'll automatically install the extension. And now we have this really fun looking Blender theme. And if you want to change between or switch between different themes, simply go to Edit, Preferences, go to Themes, and you could switch between themes here. For example, here's Matrix, here's Blender Light if you're absolutely insane, or here's Blender Dark. Tip number 25. We could add fillets or chamfers to edges on our object by using the Bevel tool. This is the Bevel tool right here. Go ahead and select on a face, and if we drag this right here, you'll see it creates a bevel. Now if you open up this bevel panel here before clicking anything else, we could change the number of segments to make it essentially a fillet. You'll notice the scale of the fillet is kind of skewed. This is because we didn't apply the scale of the object before applying the bevel. If I go back into object mode, press Ctrl A and apply rotation and scale. Now back in edit mode, if we bevel this edge here, you'll notice the bevel is actually 45 degrees like it should be. And now we have a nice rounded fillet at the bottom of our object, which, important to note, is not ideal for designing for 3D printing because this overhang is too steep. A clever way to add a rounded edge to the bottom of an object for designing for 3D printing is to add a combo of a chamfer and a fillet. So let's go ahead and drag the bevel like so. Okay, that looks good. Now let's go into edge selection mode and we'll select only these top edges here, like so. Now when we drag it, you'll see we're adding another bevel. But let's go ahead and add more segments here to make it rounded. We'll add 20. So now what we've done is we've created a hybrid of a chamfer and a fillet, and it only has a 45 degree, so it is printable. Tip number 26, how to use the boolean modifier to join or subtract objects from each other. Let's go ahead and create a hole on the bottom of this container here. To create a new object, press Shift A or go to the Add menu right here, and let's go ahead and add a cylinder. Now when you add a cylinder, before you click on anything, you'll see you can open up this dialog box here. And here we can set the resolution or quality of this cylinder. I'm going to change the number of vertices from 32 to 64. So it's a little bit higher resolution. Now, you can see our cylinder is very small and we can't really see it. So I'm going to select the cylinder object right here in the top right, press N to open up the properties, and now we can change the dimensions. Let's say we want the hole to be 10.6 millimeters, 10.6 millimeters, and let's set the height to something pretty big so we could just cut a hole through it. Now select the object you want to cut, in this case the container here, go to the modifier properties, this blue wrench here, click add modifier, and type in boolean, and it will automatically appear here. And now you can select between intersect, union, and difference. These union will join and difference will subtract. Select on the eyedropper, select the eyedropper tool here, select on our cylinder, click on this down button, click on this, open this drop down, and click apply. Now if we delete this cylinder here, by pressing X and delete, you'll see we now have a perfect 10.6 millimeter hole in our object. Tip number 27. If you're using a laptop or a keyboard that doesn't have a regular numpad on the right side of the keyboard, make sure to turn on Emulate Numpad. Go to Edit, Preferences, go to Input, and check Emulate Numpad. Now you can use the keyboard shortcuts for changing the view. For example, press 7 to look at the top view, press 1 to look at the front view, press 3 to look at the side view. You can also use the view icons here to switch between different views. Tip number 28. Use the Measure It add-on to have more control over how you measure an object's dimensions. Go to extensions.blender.org and search for Measure It, one word. Go ahead and click on this one right here and click Get Add-on. Now all you have to do is drag this into Blender. Now, if you go to View here, you'll notice a Measure It tool dropdown has appeared. Now, simply go ahead and select the object that you want to measure, go into Edit mode, select on 2 vertices, and now we can measure the distance between these vertices. Open the dropdown for the Measure It tool, and select Segment. But you'll notice it's still in meters and not in millimeters. To change this, just go to Units and change it from meters to millimeters. Now you can see the dimension between those 2 points even in object mode. Tip number 29. To change the appearance of your dimensions here, you could go over here in the Measure It tools, go down here, open up Items right here, and click on this checkbox here for Override. Now you can set the color and font size of the dimensions. So if I want to change the color, I could change it to maybe just a regular white color or even black. White's pretty easy to see, and we can make it much bigger by typing the size right here. So it's a little bit easier to see. Tip 30. Know about an object's origin point. So here we have this object right here. If I go ahead and move it, you'll see a small yellow or orange dot at the center of this object. That's the object's origin. So right now, if I move this object, you'll see the location here is -19. If I move it, you'll see the location changes. And it's based off of this point right here. So if we set it to 0, 0, 0, that origin point is at 0, 0, 0 in the world. And you'll notice our object is centered perfectly, so half the object is under the ground plane. But what if we wanted to move the origin point? Well, actually what we would be doing is we'd be moving the object's vertices and not actually the origin point. So for example, let's go ahead and go into edit mode here. I'm going to turn on X-ray mode and select all of the vertices. Now go to the front view here and press G to move. And I'm going to move it up in the Z direction by pressing Z and aligning these vertices with the floor plane here. So now you'll notice the origin point is at the bottom of the object. Tip number 31, how to switch between perspective view and orthogonal view. Right now we are in perspective view. Basically, as things get further back in the distance, they get smaller. So if I move this back, you can see it gets smaller and smaller, just like real life. However, you could also be in orthogonal mode, which basically means that everything is perfectly dimensional on the screen, and it's not really how the real world works, but you can see the dimension of objects relative to each other. Let me just show you. If we click on this button right here, we can switch between orthogonal mode. Now at first it'll look funky and it'll look like this is huge in the back. But if you take your hand and you just take your hand on the screen and you measure the front here and the back, these lines will be exactly the same length. That's the orthogonal view. It's kind of like a 90s video game or early 2000s video game like Roller Coaster Tycoon. That's an orthogonal view. So you can switch between orthogonal and perspective depending on what you're doing and depending if you need to see the actual real length of an object on the screen. Tip number 32, how to fix inside-out bodies in Blender. Let's say we're designing an object here and we are in edit mode. If I go to face selection mode, and let's say for some reason we're building our mesh and this happens. We move it and we pull this down like so. Okay, it looks like that is fine. So even if I move it up above the ground plane, it looks like a normal mesh. However, it's technically inside out. Blender doesn't really care whether or not you design something improperly. It gives you a lot of flexibility, but with that, things could be incorrect and you may not know. So how do you know? Open up the viewport overlays and turn on face orientation. Now you notice the whole object turns red. That's because we are looking at the inside of the object, and technically, by moving that face down, we've made it inside out. So now if we go back into face selection mode, select on this face right here, move it back up. Let me go back, turn off X-ray mode here so we can see. If we move this up, you'll notice when it's inside out, it's red, and when it's correct, it's normal looking. So to check to make sure your mesh is correct, go ahead and go to the viewport overlays and click on face orientation. That way you can see if you've accidentally designed something inside out. Tip number 33, how to fix broken meshes. Now, because Blender is so flexible and it gives you basically unlimited power to design however you want and place vertices, edges, and faces however you want as well, you could have a mesh that ends up being non-manifold or not watertight or not fully enclosed. So here's what I mean here. So let's say we select on this face right here and I click X to delete and I delete the face. Now you'll see the inside of the object and it's red because those are the inside faces of that object. How do we fix this? Well, if you go into vertex selection mode, we can select on these 4 vertices on top and you can press F to fill with a new face. So that's how you could fix a broken mesh. Tip number 34, how to use the loop cut tool. So this tool right here is called the loop cut tool. Go ahead and select it. And if you're in vertex selection mode and you hover over the object, you'll see some loop cuts appear. Now, if we click and hold, you can position the cut. Basically, we're creating edges fully around this loop. So now let's go ahead and put it here. And you'll notice this pop up right here. Usually it's by default down like this, but if you open it up, they'll keep opening up like so. You could change the number of cuts and a bunch of other settings as well. So basically what you could do is you could create a couple different loop cuts. Then you could go to the extrude tool and you could select on a face, but you have to go to face selection mode. And you could pull out faces like so and create objects in this way. Tip number 35, learn how to use the knife tool. The knife tool is similar to the loop cut tool, however, it gives you a lot more control. You can basically create an edge wherever you want. So go ahead and click on the knife tool right here, and you'll notice, let's go back into vertex selection mode here, we can select on this point right here, it'll automatically snap to that face. And if we drag down like so and click here, and then go ahead and press enter or return, we could create our own custom edge wherever we want. Now, if we go ahead and click extrude, go back to face selection mode, now we could extrude this face here, which has this nice angle. Tip number 36, know about the cursor. See this red and white circle right here? That is the cursor. You could also see the cursor tool here. Sometimes when you're designing something in certain modes, you'll accidentally move the cursor. So see how I've selected the cursor tool and now I can move the cursor. This could be pretty frustrating to beginners. So what is the purpose of this cursor? Well, essentially it's kind of a origin point that you could use to create objects. So for example, if I go to object mode here and the cursor, let's say it's just right here. If I press if I press Shift A to create a new object, and let's just create a sphere, you see it creates it on that cursor there. But how, and you can see here I'm still clicking and it's moving the cursor, and it could be confusing to beginners for sure. How do we put the cursor back to the world origin? Well, you'll use the keyboard shortcut Shift S, and you hold it down here, and you can set the cursor to world origin right here. So you just hold Shift S, move your mouse, and hover over move to the origin, and it'll place it there. But what else is this useful for? Well, let's say we want to create an object. See, I'm still moving the cursor. Go back to this select box mode here to stop moving the cursor. Let's put the cursor back to world origin. Let's say we want to create an object at this point right here. Go into edit mode. And once again, it's moving the cursor. Make sure you go back to the select box mode, and I'll put the origin once again back to the world origin. Let's select on at this point right here, and let's put the world origin or the cursor onto this point here. Hold Shift S, and you could go to cursor to selected. Now the cursor will go here, and we could create by going, I'll just go up to add again. Let's add another sphere here, and we could scale it up as well. Important to note, we're in edit mode right now, and I just created a new object. It's technically a part of this same object here. So that's actually something we don't want to do. So I'll go ahead and undo. After we've selected the cursor to this point, go back into object mode. Now we could create our sphere here, and I'll scale it up here. And let's say we want to take a notch out of this corner. Select this object, go to our modifiers, add modifier, and let's go to boolean. And now we can subtract this from the corner here and click apply. And if we delete this sphere by pressing XD and XD, you can see we've used the cursor in a useful way to create a circular cutout of this corner. Tip number 37, how to duplicate an object in Blender. Go ahead and select on an object and press Shift D to duplicate. Tip number 38, the keyboard shortcut to scale an object is simply press S on the keyboard for scale. You can also scale in the Z direction, the X direction, the Y direction, or even along a plane by pressing Shift Z to scale in two directions at once. Tip number 39, to rotate an object using a keyboard shortcut, press R on the keyboard to rotate. Once again, you can constrain it along different axes. For example, Z, like so, X, or press Y to rotate along the Y axis. Tip number 40, you could join two objects in Blender by selecting both of the objects and pressing Ctrl J to join. Now you can see they're both highlighted yellow, which means they're both the same active selected object. Tip number 41. Let's say we have an object here and it's a cube. Let's just go ahead and scale it up here, go into edit mode, face selection mode, and let's just go ahead and just change the shape of the object here. So for some reason our object has to be like this, and it goes up like so, and then one more time like this, and one more time like this. Now, if we go into edge selection mode here, and we select on this edge here and we move it, how steep of an overhang can we have here? And remember, for this part here, for whatever reason, the design has to be printed in this orientation. We cannot move the orientation over. Well, in general, for 3D printing, an overhang of no more than 60 degrees is printable. And really, if you want a high quality bottom surface here, you don't really want to go much over 45 degrees for this overhang. So when you're designing parts for 3D printing and you don't want to have to use support material, because support material can be very annoying, just know that the steepest you could really go on the overhang is about 60 degrees, and you really kind of want to hover around 45 degrees max. Tip number 42. Now there actually is an exception to the overhang rule, and that is bridging. So let's say, for example, here, we want to create some sort of overhang right here. We can simply just go ahead and select all of these faces like so, and press X to delete, and let's go ahead and delete these faces. Now we can see the inside of our object, so we'll need to repair the mesh here. So let's go ahead and select on these vertices here, press F to fill, select on these vertices right here, F to fill, and if we keep doing this here, click on this, 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 F to fill, this, and this, click F to fill. Now our object here has, if I go to the front view or the side view here, you'll notice this is technically an overhang here because we're printing up in this orientation like so. So technically, this is I would say a 100% or 0% overhang right here. But because it's perfectly horizontal, the 3D printer can actually bridge across this overhang, technically, kind of 3D printing in mid-air. So it's super cool with 3D printing. It uses the tensile strength of the filament. So as it's going across here, it'll build like the edges and then kind of fill in like so. And then you can print perfect overhangs like so, without needing to use supports, and this is called bridging. Tip number 43, how to think about object orientation for 3D printing. I'm just gonna go ahead and press Ctrl Z here and bring this back to this state of the model here. Now, what is the optimal way to print this object? In this orientation here, we have this tall vertical column with this overhang. But there's an easy way to optimize this print where it doesn't need to have any overhangs. Let's go ahead and go back into object mode here. And if we just take this object here, click on it, and if we rotate it like so, and let's just rotate it along the x-axis by -90 degrees, you just type in -90. Now the orientation is much more optimal for 3D printing. So the long column here is now printed horizontally, which will be stronger, and there's now no longer any overhang. So when you're designing things for 3D printing, it's important to think about the orientation in which it'll be printed. Tip number 45, how to create optimal holes and axles with the appropriate amount of tolerance or clearance. First off, here we have a rectangular prism. Let's go ahead and create a cylinder. Now, when we create this cylinder, don't click anything else until you open up this dialog box here, and let's increase the resolution. I'm gonna go to 256, just so it's very high resolution, and might as well set the radius here as well. I'm gonna do 5.2, and the depth, let's just go ahead and do 100, so it's just very tall. All right, so there is the cutting tool that we're going to be using to cut a hole in this box here. So let's go ahead and click on this box here. Go to Add Modifier in the Modifier Properties here. Add Modifier, go to Boolean. I have it recent here, or you just type in Boolean. And then let's go ahead and click here, or the eyedropper, and select the cylinder. Now go ahead and click this drop down here and click Apply. Now, if we go ahead and click on this cylinder here, press X to delete and click Delete, you'll notice we have a hole. And if we go into edit mode for this box here, you'll see the resolution of the hole is pretty high. Definitely high enough for 3D printing, especially FDM 3D printing. Now, when I chose the dimensions for this hole here, I typed in 5.2, and that's because I wanted a 0.4 millimeter extra clearance. So for example here, let's go ahead and create another cylinder here. And this time, instead of 5.2, I'm going to type in 5, okay, and press enter. Now you'll notice, so it has a radius of 5 millimeters and a diameter of 10. So essentially, we have a 0.4 millimeter extra clearance here. And because we're printing this box in this orientation here, it'll have a nice, smooth print. We don't have to worry about any layer lines of the top of the arch. Let's say if we took this whole thing here and rotated it along the x-axis 90 degrees. This here, it could be printed here. However, there is an arch here with a very steep overhang, so it'll be a little bit rough on top. which will cause the axle to not spin or be able to rotate as well. But if we just print it flat in this orientation here, we'll have a perfectly round circle that's smooth for the axle to rotate on. Tip number 46, how to avoid layer line weakness when designing a part for 3D printing. So let's say we have a cube here, and I'm gonna go into edit mode here, and then just go ahead and extrude this like so. Select on this face and extrude it like so. So here's the part that we want to print. In this orientation, it's not optimized for strength because this here is a vertical column and this is a sharp corner here, which would add a stress concentration to the layer lines going across here. So if you're imagining it printing like so, we have layer lines going across like this. And at this point right here, there's a new layer that starts at this sharp corner. So we have a compounding effect where we have this sharp corner, which is a strong stress concentration, the layer line, so the part could break right here. An easy way to fix this is just to take the part here, rotate it, and place it sideways like this. And now when the printer prints, it prints along in this direction like so. So this whole thing is built on continual flat layers across the entire part. So you avoid the stress concentration and the layer line weakness. Tip number 47, when 3D printing and when designing things for 3D printing in Blender, you'll want to think about how a part will be printed. And if we have a curve in this orientation here, this top part of this kind of arch shape right here, the layer lines will be very visible. So it would be better to rotate this part here along the y-axis, 90 degrees, and print it in this orientation here. That way the nozzle will move smoothly around this edge here and create a perfectly smooth curve across the part, and the layer lines will just be stacked up like so. Tip number 48. Blender can be used to create print-in-place or articulated designs. So what does this mean? It means you can have a part that either kind of flexes or you can create hinges, things like that. Think like the Flexi Dragons and all those really popular 3D printed toys that people are creating, or even hinged boxes and so on and so forth. So here's an example of how you could do that using Blender. So we have two parts right here, and we will export this as one single body because it prints in place, pre-assembled, and you can't even take it apart unless you completely destroy it. So let me hide this by pressing H here. So here's the first part of the hinge here. So this, it relies on bridging. So the axle here essentially just bridges across this gap here. And then we design another part here. This one here, I'll hide this. It's just a simple part here with a chamfer, some fillets around it here, and the axle prints through it. So in this orientation, this could easily be printed and it will be print in place. And because the axle is printed horizontally with bridging, it's actually stronger than you might think because there's no layer line weakness and so on and so forth. So this is just one method that you could use to create print in place parts using Blender. Tip number 49, how to create threaded objects in Blender. First, you'll need to go to extensions.blender.org and go ahead and add the Bolt Factory add-on. Now, once you have it installed, to create a threaded object, all you have to do is press Shift-A to add a mesh. And if you go down here, you'll see bolt. So select bolt, and now we have a standard bolt. So for example, we could create a 3D print optimized thread by going to the operator presets here, go to M12, and go ahead and go into edit mode for this object here. And we'll need to select the toggle X-ray mode here, and let's go to vertex selection mode. And now if we select all of these vertices, press S to scale, Z, so it scales along the Z axis. And if we type in 2, now our threads have been stretched vertically times 2 by a factor of 2. And if we go into object mode, we can see that the overhang angle is not as steep. So that's an easy way to create threads that are more optimized for 3D printing. Now to print this, what we would want to do is just simply rotate it around like so, 180. And now the threaded bolt right here will print in this orientation. Tip 50. How to add extra clearance to your threaded parts. Let's go ahead and create a box here by going to mesh. We'll create a cube and let's go ahead and scale it. Let's say 10, let's do 20, and I'll scale it in the Z, let's say 10 like so. I'll move it up here. So now what we want to do is, I'm going to turn off X-ray mode here so we can see better. Go ahead and select on the bolt and press S. Or actually, first we'll need to duplicate this bolt. So click on the bolt and press Shift D to duplicate. Now let's go ahead and click on bolt 002 here, and we'll scale it by pressing S to scale and Shift Z to scale on the XY plane. Type in 1.1. Now we'll use this as our cutting tool. So select your box here, go to Add Modifiers, and then we'll go to Boolean, and we will select bolt 002, and it'll be different, so it'll be cutting it. Go down, click the drop down, click apply. Now go ahead and take bolt 02 and then delete it. And if we zoom in here, you'll see we now have some extra clearance for our threaded bolt. And if we go ahead and move this object right here, just click G to grab, Shift Z to move it along the XY plane. Now we've cut a threaded portion out of our box here. Tip number 51, how to change the color or appearance of an object in Blender. First, we'll need to go up here to the top right here, and we need to switch between the viewport shading mode from solid to material preview. So go ahead and select on this right here. Now select the object you want to change the color of, and we're going to add what's called a material. So if you click on this button right here, this is the material properties, click on new. Now change the base color here to whatever you want. In this case, I want to create an orange object. So I'll go ahead and just drag over here and then select orange. And now we've changed the appearance or the color of an object in Blender. Tip number 52. Know the difference between wireframe, solid, material preview, and render view modes. You can find them all right up here. So for example, wireframe will just show you simply the wireframe of your objects. And once again, you could turn on X-ray mode or leave off X-ray mode. And then we have the default mode, which is the solid shading mode. Once again, there's X-ray and regular. And then we have material preview, which is the one we just used to change this to orange. And then we have rendered view mode. And this is a really cool one. And we'll go into this more in the next tip. Tip number 53. Know the difference between the different render engines in Blender, specifically Eevee and Cycles. If we click on this button here, this is the render properties. If we click on this drop down, we'll see Eevee and Cycles, the main two render engines that you'll use in Blender. So what's the difference between these two? Well, Eevee is a much faster, yet I would say less precise render engine. So right now we're selected on Eevee. If we go to Cycles, you'll notice it takes a little bit longer to load. However, it's much more realistic looking. If you want to render things very quickly, let's say you're rendering an animation which has a bunch of frames, most of the time you'll want to use the Eevee render engine because it's just way faster. The look will be a little bit more like a video game. However, it is possible to get a really photorealistic look. And here we are in Cycles right here. You'll notice that it's a little bit grainy when I move the viewport around. That's because it's calculating a lot more of the shadows and the light bounces, etc. You'll notice the scene is very dark, and that's because we don't have any lights set up. So I'll take us on to the next tips. Tip number 54, how to add HDR environment textures in Blender. Now this is the easiest and best way to add really nice looking lighting to your scene. So go ahead and go to 3dprinteracademy.com and go to search here and type in HDR. Right here, there's a free HDR lighting scenes for Blender right here. These are free, and go ahead and click buy now to download. Once the download completes, go ahead and go back into Blender, and we are in the rendered view mode here. Now click on this button here, the world properties, and then we'll change the surface color here, and we'll change, click on this button right here, the little yellow button, and go to environment texture. And now you'll see this bright pink color appear. This means we don't have any environment texture loaded. So we'll need to load one of the ones that we just downloaded into our scene. So click this button here, the open button. After clicking the open button, navigate to the file on your computer, and it should load and look something like this. Now you can tell the objects look really nice. However, it's kind of strange because we have this realistic scene in the background. So what we'll need to do is hide the actual image and just take the lighting from the image. Click on this button here, the render properties, scroll down, go to film, open this drop down here, and select this checkbox here for transparent. Now that will hide the image in the background, but it'll keep the lighting. Tip number 55. Learn how to create your own advanced parametric materials in Blender. So here we are in the default layout view here, and this kind of has a matte orange color, and this one here has a very shiny metallic copper look. And this was created by going to shading up here, and we just go ahead and click a new material here. And this is my custom copper material that I've created here. These are called nodes, and you could add different shader nodes. By pressing Shift A, you could add different things like, for example, a noise texture, which I've already added here, a color ramp, and you just click and drag these into here to create your own parametric materials. Now you can go really deep into creating your own materials, and that is way too much detail for these tips and tricks. But just know that it is there, and it's something that you can learn. Tip number 56, learn how to create your own lights for your scene. Press Shift A and go down to light. Now there are 4 different types of lights that you could add: a point, a sun, a spot, or an area. I usually like to do area lights. Press G to grab and move it up. And I'm going to scale it a lot. Scale, let's do another 10, factor of 10 here. Now you notice we don't really see any light coming from this flat kind of diffuse light panel. So make sure you select on the light here and go to the light properties. And we could change the power here to something like 10,000. And we can go even higher here. It looks like 50,000 might be better. And now we can actually see some light on our object. Let's go ahead and rotate this. Rotate along the Y here. And I'll move it in this direction here like so. And now you can see we have some light on our object. But we do still have our environment texture turned on. So that is really lighting up most of the scene still. So let's go back to the world properties here, and let's change the strength of our environment light, the HDR, and let's go down to 0.05. Now, a lot of the light is coming from this panel. And if we completely turn off the strength here, you can see this is all the light coming from the panel. So if we select a light again, we could increase the strength even further. Let's go ahead and change it to 1 million. Now you can see quite a lot of light coming from this panel. And we can even scale the panel up bigger to add some more light. And then you could take this panel here and duplicate it, move it. We could rotate it around, move it like so. Now we have 2 lights in our scene. So you're able to essentially create your own virtual photo studio inside of Blender. Tip number 57, use cameras to render your scene. Let's just do a quick example here. Press Shift A. Let's go ahead and create a camera. Let's scale it up a lot. I'm going to move it quickly here. And let's go ahead and move this up like so and move it back here, then up again. And I'm going to delete this object here. And let's just go ahead and render our metallic bolt. Okay, now to view what the camera's seeing, press 0 on your keyboard. Now let's go ahead and look at some of the properties that we need to know about for rendering. First off, there are the camera properties here. So right now it's set to perspective, and it's kind of designed to mimic a real camera. For example, we have the focal length is set to 50. Now go to your render settings right here, the output properties, and you can set the resolution. And let's say we just want it to be a square. We could do 1080 by 1080. And then we could go, let's go ahead and move our camera a little bit closer here. Press G, and we could move it a little bit closer, and let's move it down a little bit and press 0 again to see what the camera's seeing. Now to move the camera while we're in the camera, you can press N and go to view, and you can click lock camera to view. Now when we move around, we're actually moving the camera. So it's much easier to kind of frame your scene like this. So maybe we want to just get a nice picture of the bolt here with a transparent background. So now we've set the resolution here, and let's set the output. I like to do PNG, and we could do PNG with the alpha channel, which means it'll have a transparent background. Now before we go ahead and render our scene, let's go ahead and make sure our render settings are set properly. So let's go to here and let's go to our render properties here. And right now our render properties are set extremely high, 4096, which is kind of insane. Let's just go down to 32. And make sure the checkbox for denoise is set. Now let's go ahead and go to render right here and click render image. So this says it should take just about a couple seconds to render. And here we have a picture of our rendered bolt. Go to image and click save. And this is what the final image looks like. It has a transparent background, so you could overlay this render on top of any other image. Tip number 58. Know how to create text in Blender. Let's do a quick example here. We'll go ahead and delete the default cube, and we will create a cube. Let's go ahead and scale it. Press Shift A, and let's go ahead and add some text here. Go to top view, and we'll just type out 3D Printer Academy here. Go ahead and move it like so. Now we'll need to convert this text object into a mesh. So go to Object here, go down to Convert, and let's convert it to a mesh. Now when we press Tab, we could press A and we could extrude it up. Now we have 3D text that we've created in Blender. And we could join it to this object here to make our own 3D printable text object. Tip number 59. Sometimes when you're joining two objects together, it'll be a little bit glitchy. For example, if we're joining this text to this object here, let's go ahead and go to Add Modifier, and let's add a boolean modifier here. If you're ever running into issues where it's not joining or subtracting correctly, you could choose between float, exact, and manifold, and just kind of try each one and see which one works best. Tip number 60. You can create gears as well as other things by using the Modern Primitive add-on in Blender. Go ahead and drag this into Blender to install. To use it, simply press Shift-A, and you can add now. To use it, press Shift-A, go to Mesh, and now you can see an option for Modern Primitive. And here you could add cool things like a gear. And it's really easy to modify the gear just by pulling on these different options. Tip number 61. Know how to import an STL file into Blender. Go to File, go to Import, and STL file. And here we have our imported STL file. Tip number 62. Understand how to use sculpting. Go to Sculpting right here, and let's say we want to modify our benchy here. Here are some of the basic tools. You can find the tools for sculpting down here. For example, here is the clay strips tool. Just simply click and drag to modify the shape. Now you'll notice it is not doing at all what we want, and that takes us to the next tip. Tip number 63. Know how to remesh your object before sculpting. Go up here to remesh. Now here's where you want to be very careful because you can completely crash Blender if the voxel size is too small. So let's just go ahead and start off with 2 and click remesh. So now you can see 2 is way too big. Let's go ahead and go down to 0.5 and click remesh. The resolution's getting better, but it's still not high enough. Okay, let's go down to 0.1 and remesh. Now the reason I start with such a big number is because you could create a ton, millions and millions of polygons, and it will crash your computer. It'll basically just freeze Blender. So make sure you start big and go smaller. Now that we've remeshed it, we can successfully use these tools. For example, the clay strips tool, and we could easily modify our shape. Another commonly used tool is the smooth tool. You can find the smooth tool right here, and you can simply use it to smooth out your shape. Tip number 64. Use Blender to create your own animations. If we select on our object here and press I, it'll create a keyframe on our animation timeline. Now if we move this here to a new spot along the timeline, we move our object here, let's say we rotate it like so, and we press I again, it'll create a new keyframe here. And we could essentially create our own little animation here. I'll go ahead and, first I'll go ahead and drag this here, and we'll move this guy here like so, and then rotate, and then press I. And now we've created 3 keyframes on our animation timeline. If you click back here and click play, you'll notice we've created our own animation. Tip number 65. Did you know you could automate tasks using Python in Blender? This is a really cool feature, one of my favorites. So open up this right here and click on this drop down here and go to Text Editor. Now click New. So here's where we could put any of our own custom Python script to do our own automations. In the next tip, I'll go through a full example. Tip number 66. Using AI to create your own Python code to automate Blender. So here I am in Claude AI, and I've asked it this question here. I gave it this prompt right here. You could pause it and go ahead and read it. And then it popped out 3 versions of code here. So if I go to version 1, you can see it gave me this more complicated version, and I said, please simplify. And I told it which version of Blender I'm using because there were some errors that were popping up. I just told it there's an error on line 19. I told it I was using Blender 4.5, etc., keep it simple. And then by version 3, it gave me some working code and it corrected this line right here. So all I did was in the text location that we looked at on the last tip, was I just pasted the text into here, and I have an object in my scene that I want to produce different size variations of. And then all you have to do is click the play button, and in this case, I told it to make 10 different size variations of this object. Click play and it saves it to my desktop. So here are the different size variations that the automation produced. Pretty cool, right? And finally, tip number 67. Use AI to automate batch production in Blender. For example, let's say you want to create a bunch of labels with a bunch of different text. This script right here just takes a list of different text that you want to be placed onto a label and produces a bunch of labels automatically, and as many as you want. So you could do hundreds, even thousands of unique labels. And then when I put them into the slicer, here are my custom labels. So now instead of manually typing out each individual label and exporting the STL, you just have to type out what you want to be written on the different labels, and the AI generated code will produce a bunch of STL files for you. This video was brought to you by the Blender Masterclass 2026. My name's Steven. Thanks for watching. I hope you found these tips and tricks helpful, and happy printing. Check the description for exclusive discounts and more.